Psst. Hey, you know how Mobile Suit Gundam decided to do that thing a few years back where they officially collaborated with Hello Kitty? And Hello Kitty won? Or maybe when in celebration of the Battle Cats Evangelion crossover, Battle Cats reanimated the entire Evangelion opening by switching out the whole cast with cats? This probably isn't actually all too surprising thanks to anime crossover culture being as notorious as it is, a la this, that, and However, there's one crossover that you've probably never heard of unless you're versed enough in 2010 anime humor or just a 43-year-old Japanese businessman. And that was the crossover fandom that would come to be coined as
Ikadex,
where on May 22nd, 2010, yes, that was 13 years ago, a little-known Pixiv artist going by Kanikama would post the first scene fan art depicting the anime character Squid Girl dressed in the robes of Index from the Toaru Majutsu something franchise. And for the sake of several jokes that I forgot to frame later in this video, let's just call Kanikama the Oppenheimer of the Ikadex fandom. Because what Kanikama had effectively just done was trigger the initial isotope of uranium-235 that would set off a chain reaction of Squid Girl Index crossovers in the coming months. Whether they were depicted as friends, rivals, lovers, or frogs? Above anything else, it got me thinking, you know, maybe Index is better than Railgun. Because instead of giving us this, Ikadex would actually break the habit and give fans a crossover that wasn't puppeteered by a giant corporate entity, and provide us more value than just being remembered for having one of the best openings ever made. But like a lot of bad habits, the relapse of this crossover becoming officially recognized and included into the show itself flew them too close to the sun, scorching this fandom's legacy forever. Oh, and yeah. Oppenheimer's creation would also go on to quotably become death, destroyer of, you know the rest, but oh, the school bell rang, so Iko? Hi, dissecting what the crossover's name Ikadex actually means, you'll end up with a pretty on-the-nose marriage of the words Ika Musume, meaning Squid Girl in Japanese, and Index from a certain magical index. However, there's a more traditional nickname for this crossover known as Ika Nantoka-san, which is way harder to explain, but one sec. Yeah, Ika Nantoka-san is a reference to Index's dishonorable moniker in Nantoka-san, which is a name given to her by the other characters in the anime who are basically just poking fun at her lack of importance in the main storyline. The phrase Nantoka literally means something along the lines of so-and-so, anyhow, or again, something. So when other characters are talking about Index and refer to her as in Nantoka-san, it's the equivalent of them joking that they just forgot her name. So unless you're already in the know-how about this, the name Ika Nantoka-san won't even make sense to a native Japanese speaker, since it's really just saying squid something-san. Thanks for listening. Now, Squid Girl and Index are no stranger to crossover culture. I mean, Index is both directly and indirectly referenced in a boatload of media back in the late 2000s to early 2010s. There was even a point where Squid Girl herself went on to have an official crossover with Splatoon where you could dress up in her squid hat, squid shoes, and squid skin. Who knows, maybe that new movie Hayao Miyazaki's been keeping under wraps is gonna have a Squid Girl crossover too, since he was actually able to set aside his hate boner for the first time in his life for her. No, I didn't make that up. The anime itself, Shinryaku Ika Musume, literally meaning invade Squid Girl, follows a main character Squid Girl who swam up from the bottom of the ocean to invade humanity, but has the intelligence comparable to a kid running up to my white van for free candy. So instead, she ends up enslaved by these two girls working at a beachside restaurant that she tried to invade and is cursed to throw up spaghetti for the rest of her life. Her alleged motive for revenge is due to humans polluting the sea, although her actions in the series itself leave a lot to be desired. So yeah, whether you want to chalk this up to a really roundabout anti-pollution PSA is up to how much faith you have in an anthropomorphic squid, which to me just about equals the amount of faith I have in Jesus Christ. If my script hasn't set off any woo-woo alarms already, Squid Girl's manner of speaking sparked a lot of catchphrases, ending every sentence with her signature degeso instead of des, playing on Desu's old-fashioned spelling, deges. She's basically making a squid pun in every sentence because the gesso part of degeso means squid tentacles. Index's personality on the other tentacle is more or less what Squid Girl would be like if she actually went to church, which, oh yeah. If her name being in the literal title didn't already convince you, Index is one of the main characters in the Toaru franchise, aka a certain magical index, a certain scientific railgun, a certain scientific accelerator. I'm certain you can pick your poison. Index Librarorum Prohibitorum is a 14 to 15-year-old nun with photographic memory who just so happened to memorize a full index of 103,000 grimoires, thus her name literally meaning the list of forbidden books. In this universe, reading even one grimoire is seen as enough to poison your mind, though somehow Index is seemingly unaffected affected by it. She's also almost always seen wearing her nun outfit known as the Walking Church, which you couldn't go to a single Comiket without seeing like 20 times. The world of the Tawara franchise is also fairly unique in that society coexists between magical powers and advanced science, thus you get its two main entries, Magical Index and Scientific Railgun. With that being said, you've probably picked up by now that these two series have about as much in common as you'd have with a non-blood related sister. That is to say, nothing. Sorry. I'd say there was no rhyme or reason for this crossover's existence, but there's a whole list of reasons. And may so a few rhymes, I guess all. Because the only real reason that Squid Girl and Index were constantly seen trading clothes had less to do with their respective series and more to do with them both looking like blue Takis drenched in ranch dressing. This, along with Index and Squid Girl having their own chibi variants, which, while not completely unseen at the time, we'll see them later, would make Index a special recipe for invasion. You see, Index's first season had already aired in 2008, meaning it was safe to say that season 2 of Index was met with a lot of anticipation for its fall 2010 debut. So blend that with a certain coincidental coinciding air date of a show whose title is already as on the nose as the premise itself, and that's how you get. I think in understanding the Baker test level explosion of Ikadex though, it's important to understand how innocent and perfect our world used to be before the golden age of the internet kicked the bucket. By the late 2000s, the video sharing service Nico Nico DOUGA, usually referred to as just Nico Nico or NND, was tenta-krilling it in Japan. This was basically Japan's own version of YouTube back in the day, granted a lot more... Now, I know you haven't technically seen this site yet in the video since my OCD chose to redraw it over 29 fucking times, but if you've ever seen those videos with the Japanese text flying across the screen, chances are it came from here. If there was a single word, though, that I could use to describe Nico Nico as a whole, it would be... chaos. In recent years, NND has turned into more of a time capsule than anything, but this was the origin of your now iconic Mads, Miku Miku dance videos, Gachimuchi, Toho memes, Vocaloids, and child porn. Don't get me wrong, it's still incredibly popular, at least in Japan, but with the majority of the user base migrating to YouTube, only a very niche community of cockroaches still spring up from the dead now and then. If you grab a magnifying glass though, you can still see teensy-weensy little cockroach legs sprinkled around on YouTube even now. More importantly, however, at least for this, was the presence of the ever-elusive fandom crossovers. You see, something that I've kind of failed to mention, although you might have already noticed, is that active Nico Nico uploaders teetered less on passion and more on obsession, to a point where some of the parodies are so indistinguishable in quality that you might not even notice that they've been edited. And while these kinds of videos would ultimately be what drove Ikadex to starstruck stardom, its beginnings were far more humble, cause I kinda lied. So, the Ikadex fan art that I showed at the start of this video isn't really the first one. Like, yeah, it was the drawing that opened the floodgates into making this a more mainstream thing, but the true catalyst came almost 2 years earlier, which is fittingly more reminiscent of cave paintings. And if you think I'm trying to pull another fast one on you, there's a tag on this post literally labeled "Everything began from here." However, this drawing would be utterly dwarfed by Kanikama's illustration, which got almost 10 times as many views. And for 2010 Pixiv standards, that was, pretty good. I think largely because of this post is why fans anxiously anticipated Squid Girl and Index's first episodes for months, as seen by the gradual incline of art. And literally the day after Squid Girl's first episode premiered, Nico Nico would do what Nico Nico does best. And no, it isn't kneeing. This video still scares the living fish sticks out of me. Yes, on October 6th, NND's first Ikadex crossover would go viral, substituting Squid Girl's voice with Index's far more subdued manner of speaking. Song and voiceover crossovers dominated this tag in the coming days, with slightly less creative parodies cropping up, like just slapping Index's new opening song onto Squid Girl's visuals, or vice versa. These would all be small shrimp though, compared to what released less than 2 weeks later, titled "Guesso Who Has Completed the Invasion of the Index 2 OP," where Squid Girl quite literally invades the magical Index opening. Just to put this into perspective, if Oppenheimer's Trinity test was Kanikama's illustration, then this video was the Soviet Union's Tsar Bomba. Like 74,000 views is already pretty good, especially back then. This video octupled that. In its first week alone, it purportedly earned 350,000 views, and as someone who literally transparents anime girls for a living, the fact that this was uploaded only 11 days following Squid Girl's first episode indicates that the dude making this had no societal obligations whatsoever, unless you consider this to be one. And honestly, after this, I'm just gonna keep it eel. these got really bad. Like, you could tell there was heart put into some of these, and they're still really cute in their own right, but not even the creators themselves could explain why they made them. Around a month after Squid Girl's initial debut, though, is when we'd see another NND upload go viral, with Invasion Index garnering over 400,000 views. Now, like, I know looking at this, you're probably pretty confused what separates this banana from the bunch, since on a surface level, it's just another smash up of clips like a lot of the other parodies. But if you've seen the Squid Girl opening as many times as me, you'd want to kill yourself. You'd notice that almost every clip of Index here is synced to both the song and what Squid Girl was actually doing in the original opening. I'll show a side-by-side in case that didn't make any sense. I mean, this guy had to dig through both Railgun and Index to somehow find clips of Index glowing in the fucking dark. Above anything else though, what this parody put front and center was how much these girls really had in common. I can't really describe how most of these other parodies went, since Nico Nico is notoriously pretty incomprehensible, so just imagine what an opening mashup of Squid Girl, K-On!, A Certain Magical Index, and Madoka Magica would look like. It wasn't even like Squid Girl was solely invading Index either. No, it became a trend to have Squid Girl invade literally everything, from Little Busters to this random 2005 visual novel that I don't think anybody has ever heard of. Yeah, no, just kidding. Nico Nico is actually jam-packed full of this fucking VN. Not only that, it became a trend in of itself to include the Ikadex invasion into whatever other anime or VN opening Squid Girl was already invading. So at this point, it was safe to say that the Ikadex crossover was a Japanese household name. To a point where around 3 months after Nico Nico's first upload of Ikadex reached shore, rumors were swirling and ink was curdling that Towaru Majutsu no Index Tan Season 2, a bonus special bundled with the limited edition Blu-ray DVD release for Volume 1, would include officially familiar face. If you're confused like me why the special was released midway through airing, well, that's because A Certain Magical Index decided to release 8 volumes packing 3 episodes into each. The first season also had specials like this where they featured Index Tan, the Tan originating from a child's slurred pronunciation of Chan, mainly associated with chibi characters because it sounds cute, I guess. So let me ask, what do you get when you see the internet cross-dressing your favorite character with another favorite character, and both characters just so happen to have their own respective chibis? Yeah, they replaced Index with Squid Girl. Perhaps because these characters already had their own chibi variants and were a hot topic among fans at the time, the Index creators thought it made perfect sense to nod at these similarities in their parody special. After all, JC staff, the studio making Index, had already crossed over with Shonatan in the year prior, so it wasn't unheard of for them to do things like this. Oh yeah, not to mention this girl literally picks up Taiga from Toradora in the first Index Tan special. Look, okay, there's no subtlety here. Toma literally says, isn't that the squid thing that invaded the OP on Nico something and has her sneezing ink out the wazoo? And with that, I guess so, Squid Girl was officially a canon crossover thanks to A Certain Magical Index Tan. Except for one squiddle problem. You see, what the 7 Seas would soon become very aware of as a result of this homage is that JC staff never actually bothered to ask the Squid Girl producers if it was okay for them to do this. Not only that, but this special as a whole was leaked onto the web days before it was even officially released, leading to the Squid Girl staff being, for lack of a better term, unimpressed. As in, they were fucking pissed. Out of the blue, on the Pony Canyon official blog for Ika Musume, a post suddenly popped up reading, regarding the issue of a video that can be taken as a parody of Ika Musume being posted on the internet. Both the production staff and the committee members are perplexed. We believe that it is a parody made out of love for the sake of fan service. However, it is also true that there are some staff members and others who were saddened by the parody. I am sure there are some fans who do not like this content. It was a young producer, Guro at Pony Canyon, who felt sick to his stomach. Let me just say again, this was on the official blog. A post like this should not go up on the official Squid Girl blog page. Now look, I love Squid Girl and I love the people who made it, but even as the fanatic holding her captive under my keyboard, I'll admit she kind of bit the dust here. From a Japanese businessman standpoint, I do see why this made them upset, and it wouldn't have hurt JC staff to at least ask or give them the heads up that they were doing this just for the sake of respect, but still. This was a fruitless controversy stemming from a cute reference by the Index team that got taken way out of tentacle. The reason this was fine in Shauna is because JC staff already owned the rights to that franchise, but even still, the Ikadex controversy was no different than them just throwing in a little WickDonald's or DK Pepper. And I'm not alone in thinking this. It's basically universally agreed that this was worked up way more than it needed to be. However, in this freak case, it wasn't the creators themselves that were making a public fuss about this, but rather the producers over at Pony Canyon. Which to that I say, yeah, Pony Canyon, fuck you. Where's AOT Part 5, huh? Japanese news outlets went hog wild over this, to a point where mere hours later, Pony Canyon realized their colossal fuck up and pussyfooted out of it in the most corporate apology imaginable. Regarding the earlier post, it has resulted in needless fan confrontation. It is also not our intention to put the parties involved in both works who are not responsible in the line of fire. We apologize for any inconvenience this may have caused to fans and all concerned. We recognize that this blog is essentially a place to provide fun information for our fans. I've received urgent inquiries from various sources, and I have not been able to organize my information as well as I should have. I should have checked the facts through the appropriate parties. I deeply regret that this was an inappropriate post for a blog. Tatsuya Ishiguro, Pony Canyon Inc. I'm still a young man, and this is the result of my reaffirmation. I am Guro at Pony Canyon. I'm gonna eat something gentle on my stomach tonight. Unsurprisingly, Japanese image boards and blogs discussed this news like crazed calamari, but seeing as Squid Girl's first season had hung up its tentacles that previous month, this pointless controversy effectively chopped off this fandom's tentacles. Lickety-split. Until they did it again. Okay, looking at this, you're probably pretty confused. Like, what does this say? When was this created? Is this even official? What the fuck is a Lawson? Translated, this text reads, a certain beverages ad campaign, a certain, can't read that part because Squid Girl's tentacles obscuring it, station. A squid is invading the magical arts, but the campaign begins with Lawson. Okay, not really. Something certainly special about this image is that if you've ever looked up the Squid Girl Index crossover on Google, it's guaranteed to be one of the first results, but even more special is that a fair number of sources and fans list this as being official art. But wait, where in Ikadex's premature death could this have existed? It obviously wasn't before the Index Tan special, because Pony Canyon was visibly sick to their stomach seeing this, and there's no way that the Tawaru team would try pulling off another crossover after the controversy, right? And even more, why is Lawson here? This just seemed so random to fake. So straight away, I started digging into Lawson, which you can basically think of as Japan's 7-Eleven equivalent, even though 7-Eleven still completely dominates the Japanese economy, but we'll slip that under the rug. If this image did turn out to be true and real, it wouldn't be all too surprising, since Lawson's had a long history of collaborating with different anime franchises. The Tawaru series has also collaborated with Lawson on several occasions, so I had no doubt in my mind that at least some part of this image was real. In the simplest sense, collaborations like this were a gacha where you'd buy select beverages and pray to Kami-sama that your receipt had the winning numbers. Usually ranked from A to F, these prizes included things like clear files, pillows, prize figures, and a hat with an index plush biting off your head. Hopefully that gives you an idea of how an image like this could have come into existence, be it on a wall scroll, trading card, I don't know. So now comes the confusing part. Every single post of this image, be it Danbaru, Safeboru, Gelbaru, you name it, sources this image to be a dead link at 2d.moe.hm. Uploaded on May 25th, 2011. The more bright-minded squids in the audience may recall that that would make this 4 months after the pot had already been stirred from the previous controversy. Even if Gelbaru is correct in this being official, there is no feasible universe where 2d.moe.hm is the original site that this came from. No reverse image search engines could trace this back any farther than May 2011, and instead gave me a parallel version of the same image with Misaka from Railgun. To me though, this still didn't really rule anything out, since it's pretty common, especially for the Tawaru team, to advertise both Index and Railgun in a pair. Also, I just want to point out the squid in the room here being the sheer amount of effort it would have taken to change out the orange logo for Index's blue one, size it up a bit, change the Japanese text over in that other corner, and on top of all of that, hide the evidence by drawing Squid Dex over Misaka with the exact same art style. What was really bugging me though were these last few words in the Ikadex one saying wakare wa nai, which kind of translate to something like not really, it doesn't mean that, it is not that, etc. But I don't know Japanese nearly well enough to know if this was just a part of the joke in Lawson's campaign, or if this was literally the guy who made this telling everybody that it was fake. So let me know in the comments, I guess. I'm sure you already have. Taking matters into my own hands, I spent way too long trying to look this up in Japanese like a squid looking for a tentacle in an ink sac until I dug up the graveyard of Magical Index Season 2. TawaruProject.com. I just want to say, hats off to Index for this site, because they managed to maintain a full web archive of every series of the Tawaru franchise without forcing me to use the Wayback Machine. Get me out of here. Back arrowing to the alleged time frame, I expected to find some sort of resolution here, especially after scrolling past a certain little beverage campaign, but what I didn't expect was for all my hope to titanically implode. I don't know how to say this, but the Lawson campaign depicting Squid Girl and Index is fake. Now look, I have searched tirelessly for any absolute proof of this image's validity. I honestly wish it was, but it isn't. I want to believe that Reddit user VidShite wasn't lying to me in his trivia lesson when he called this official art, but timeline-wise, it just doesn't make sense. There's just no way that the Twaru team would swim any closer to these lawsuit sharks, nor do I think Ika Musume would ever want to work with them after the incident. I guess for this Lawson certain beverage campaign, she was indeed used for the prizes, with the original illustration being slapped onto things like prepaid cards and an alarm clock, which, what? I'm sure some of you more observant Squid Girl fans might have already picked this up, but after staring at it for long enough, I suddenly had a glaring epiphany. Wait, this is fucking Trace! I feel like I'm shattering dreams right now, including my own, but if you needed a final nail in your already buried 20-foot coffin, here's the official art of Squid Girl that matches Lawson's 1-to-1, meaning that this rabbit hole just hit a bad end. I don't know if surprised is the right word. I was more so just melancholic of Haruhi Suzumi. I think the guy who posted this online knew exactly what he was doing too, because there's no high quality scan of this that I could find that doesn't have Squid Girl's face on it. But weirdly, it wasn't hard for me to get back on my toes, because in its own convoluted, tongue-in-cheek way, obviously this was gonna be fan art. Fan art so good that it somehow managed to fool self-diagnosed Reddit invasion lieutenants. Fan art so good that even though the text in it was screaming at everyone's face, "This is fake, not really," fans sought to believe a better world existed. In the same way that this originated as fan art, it would meet its end as fan art. And although the crossover itself is dead, the tentacle prints that it left behind are still very triangular? Hell, this video wouldn't even exist if not for this commenter randomly asking me to do it, reminding me, oh yeah, I was gonna make a video on this like 2 years ago, what happened to that? I mean, I didn't even know Westerners knew this existed, because while Nico Nico has by far some of the most talented creators on this planet, nobody's ever heard of them because they're all shipwrecked on this itty bitty site. Yeah, okay, I know Nico Nico isn't actually small, but in comparison to its competition, dude, I had to write like a 2-minute explanation on what Nico Nico even is. Do you think kids these days know about this shit? The biggest difference between N&D culture and YouTube is that a majority of the Nico Nico creators don't make videos for themselves. They're almost always targeted at their beloved fandom rather than for personal benefit. And unfortunately, with this comes the sad reality that a lot of N&D videos have been utterly lost to time now. Who knows how many more 2010 Ikadex parodies there really were. You're lucky to find any re-uploaded to YouTube, but anyway. I could go on a whole nother tangent about the Japanese Squid Girl Twitter community like I did in my last video because I love them. But even while I'm in the middle of making this video, I've still seen tweets talking about this crossover. One of these Squid Girl fans even went to the lengths of writing a full Know Your Meme page on Ikadex 12 years ago before dipping off the face of the ocean entirely. I never thought I'd be thanking Know Your Meme of all sites, but even with some slight inaccuracies, this lone eyewitness squid lover went through the effort of timelining all of these events in English up to the end. I think one of the moderators for Know Your Meme put it best here when he said, "Lack of notability, Deadpool." Oh, shit. On Deadpool. As I wrote before, this crossover fandom is still lacking in notability because it was ended in quite a short period. But I think its ending, officials' unthinking attitudes, and fruitless controversies killed the creative momentum should be archived in Know Your Meme. And I want to hope that sentiment speaks to a lot of people, where first we kick this crossover to the side of the curb like Squid Girl's Umbrella in Season 1, Episode 8, but eventually, maybe even years later like this guy, you start thinking, maybe it actually was pretty tentacool after all. Thanks for watching. Bye. Sorry that this video was long overdue. Thank you to my 2 Super Mega Bazaka Ilya fans. I know one of you pledged down, but I haven't done anything for 3 months, so I'm gonna do you anyway. Thank you Rattled Gaming and Gravels. Here's your little smackaroos real quick. And thank you to my Super Mega Ilya fans, 4FDD39EBC, I'm not reading the rest of that, Apple, Andre Hossel, Arctic Hand, Bruno Bucciolati, Candy Cane, Drowning Curious, Emma, Furl, Joke Party 69, Jonah Yonker, MHub47, No Thax, P Burger, Arya on the Planets, Red Raccoon, Sack of Rice, Sheena, Tafu Koni, The Epic Droid, True 101, Twy, and thank you to all my other patrons. Bye.